sounded, and really what's going to be hit here is commerce is going to be hit. And remember the Nile turned into blood. Can you remember, we read that the Nile was turned into blood, right? Can you imagine how that smelled? You suppose the aquatic life was killed? And maybe they were floating on the surface of the blood. Now, was that real blood? The Nile was really turned to blood? So would commerce be affected? Fishing, transportation, all that. So when you look at these, and you see, okay, the first trumpet just reminds us that there's going to be destruction. And how's it going to come? Has it been unusual for God to hit commerce? Things like that? No. So when you hit the commerce of a nation, you're starting to totally destroy the nation, correct? If there's no commerce, there's no trade, no whatever. So I know this is a figure, but you just kind of imagine what this needs to bring to their minds. So you look at the first two trumpets, we say, man, it's really coming, isn't it? And you might want to check out Exodus 9 verse 24 now or later on your own. Anybody want to add anything to these verses? I know I'm going to seem like I'm running, but I think we've been into the figurative language long enough now we can see basically what's going on and what do these basically mean. I mean, understand, this is my understanding, okay? Again, you may have a different understanding. That doesn't mean you won't go to heaven just because you don't agree with me. Or I won't go to heaven because I don't agree with you on this, all right? So there's going to be some different understanding of things, okay? Well, we'll go ahead and move on to the third and fourth trumpet. Read verses 10 through 12 with me, please. Listen to them. The third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of waters. The name of the star is called Wormwood. Interesting, isn't it? And that's something they would have understood. So a third of its star, the name of the star is called Wormwood, and a third of the waters became wormwood. And many men died from the waters because they were made bitter. The fourth angel sounded, and a third of the sun, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars were struck, so that a third of them would be darkened, and on the day would not shine for a third of it, and the night in the same was. And so, the same way. So, a lot of things going on here in this particular few verses. But I think what you'll see here is the idea of the drinking water is going to be hit. That would be familiar to us from the Exodus, right? From the plagues. And God is interfering with that water supply. And again, remember what we did in Egypt. Now, wormwood was like a tree. And if it got in touch with water and stuff, it would make it very bitter. And so they would understand the bitterness of that, all right? So when you first look at wormwood, you wonder, well, this is a bunch of worms in the wood or whatever. So, but this is noted as a tree or maybe we consider a bush, but it was something they were familiar with. So, trumpet sound, drinking water is going to be hit in this vision that he's got. And the fourth, none of this is literal. What it does describe is the Almighty's attack on the world of the ungodly. So, when you look at this book, you need to understand a few things, remember a few things. Whatever is in this book was shortly to come to pass, correct? Whatever. And when he talks to those to whom he's writing, he says, you are a kingdom of priests, you belong to God. And then he corrected two of the seven churches two of the seven churches did not have a problem. The other five had problems that needed corrected. And I brought out last week, remember, even though they had a problem, they weren't told they couldn't fellowship with one another. And now we're into this judgment goes on, and God is telling his people, don't worry, there's some hard times ahead. You're going to be tried for 10 days. Some of you are going to be cast into prison. Remain faithful unto death and receive a crown of life. And he's just basically doing that all over again. He's just saying, listen, the Almighty is going to bring an attack upon the ungodly. So who wins? The godly win. You may not be around to see it, but you still what? You still win. Any comments or addition to any of this stuff? That's just my thoughts to rush through this. Yes.
It is interesting, if you look at the order of those trumpets, it's kind of undoing backwards creation. If you look at the days of it,
Okay.
one of the last ones is dealing with, you have the day 6 with the water, and so you see they go into the water and wormwood. Then you have the land, the lights in the sky, you have the fire come from the sky, you have a third of the land, that day of creation. So it's going backwards from like days 6, 5, 4, and going back to before life was created. He's trying like a reset button of we're going to reset to just the purity that was with his creation, with his people.
Okay. Everybody hear that? I don't think I can repeat it.
But it's going back to like before,
but I had not thought about it.
Before sin entered, he's going back to the pure, his people, going back to what the world was supposed to be. So that's what I got from it.
That's your original thought? I'm not being smart by that.
Yeah.
Because I was going to ask if you had any references for that.
No.
But that's an interesting. He says it's kind of going back in creation, right? To before the world.
Yeah, before life was created.
Before life was created. Okay, ponder on that one a while, all right? I'll have to think about that. Thanks, brother. Anything else? Oh, you're still going to go to heaven, even though we've not heard about that one. So, okay. I'm really serious about this when I brought this up a couple times. We have this philosophy sometimes. If you don't agree with me, you're not going where? To heaven. And this is a book that Christians disagree with on some things. I'm right, they may be wrong, but they can still go to heaven, right? I mean, that's, okay, all right. Okay, so we're down through, okay, let's see what else we have here. We've already looked at that. Now, look at verse 13 in chapter 8. You didn't think we'd get through that quickly, did you? Then I looked, and behold, an eagle flying in mid-heaven, saying with a loud voice, woe, woe, woe. Do you want to hear that from God? Those aren't good words, are they? To those who dwell on the earth, because of the remaining blast of the trumpet of the 3 angels who are about to sound. In other words, we've heard from 4 angels right now, right? There's still 3 to come. You think these are bad? Whoa, whoa, whoa. Now an eagle comes on the scene, right? An eagle was a majestic bird, a powerful bird, right? These woes are announced because of the falling trumpets, and God has just spent time bringing to the minds of the saints his authority and control. He is in control. Who controls the eagle? Lord. God does, right? Whoa, whoa, whoa. You think it's been bad? Listen to these 3. And so we'll look into chapter 9. Anybody got anything from chapter 8 they want to add? I know I flew through that. John.
The use of woe 3 times there, that's an ancient way of saying you better pay attention to this.
Like holy, holy, holy.
Yeah.
Yes, you better pay attention. So again, I don't want you, we're going to read the same thing over again, that God's going to be in control. Do they need to hear this? They need to hear it. I like it when Peter and Paul basically say, it doesn't bother me to remind you of these things. And so what they're getting here is they're getting reminded. Can you see as they read this, and get, but Lord, you know, we've been through so much now. He says, hang on, I'm in control. But Lord, I'm in control. Right? It's like when you're trying to, probably none of you do this anymore. We never had our kids jump off the roof, but we'd have them jump off the bed or the dresser drawer. Jump, I'll catch you, And I don't know if you'd go to prison for that today or not, but we used to do that. And you'd have to persuade that child that you were going to do what? And most children, it takes a couple of times. Nicole, go ahead and jump. You'll be okay. You got to get your hands closer, and they finally jump, and stuff like that. So what God is just doing here is just reminding his children, I am in control. They will not win. They will not win. They lose in the end. But we're giving our lives. They will not win. And that's important for us to remember. So if there's nothing else, we'll move on to chapter 9. Let's see, do I have everything down there I want? This adds more terror on verse 13. Okay. There we go. All right. We're going to look at verses 9 through 12, and it's the fifth trumpet. It sounds. And let's kind of just go down through here and look at some things that will be good for us to take a gander at. Look at verses 1 through 2. Then the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven, which has fallen to the earth, and the key of the bottomless pit is given to him. He opens the bottomless pit, and smoke went up out of the pit, like the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by the smoke of the pit. Who is that which fell?
Satan.
I didn't hear you.
Satan.
Satan, okay? Let's see, do I have that on here? I don't remember. No, I don't. Okay. Satan's the one who fell, none other than him. The smoke here kind of, I think, stands for moral decadence. The earth is in darkness and the world is afflicted with spiritual moral blindness. We know that. So Satan falls. I think it's kind of apropos when you think of it. He's given the keys to what? In this vision.
Yeah.
Huh?
Bottomless pit.
Bottomless pit, which we think as what?
Hell.
Hell, represent. Okay, so Satan does have some control over some things, right? He fell, and now he's got access to hell. If you follow him, you're going to follow him into the bottomless pit, correct? Into hell. So that's kind of the first idea you get here. The devil is the leader, and this is one of the punishments brought on by God. You know that the idea of the bottomless pit, moral blindness that the Roman Empire is experiencing. Moral blindness eats at the heart of a nation. And let's go and check that out in Proverbs. Go to Proverbs. Who'll read Proverbs 14:34 for me, please? Proverbs 14:34. I'm not turning. You will, Janie? Okay. Proverbs 14:34. Yeah. Okay.
Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people.
That's an old one, isn't it? Used to hear that preached on quite a bit. I'm not saying it's not preached on today, but I can remember, boy, we were hit kind of with that. So what is that telling us about the nation we live in? Or any nation? What will keep that nation strong?
Righteousness.
Thank you, righteousness. Righteousness. And if we're not righteous, what's going to happen?
Sin will overtake everyone.
Sin overtakes. Immorality overtakes. And I think that's a good lesson for us to learn, especially since our nation is in some moral blindness, correct? And it's a good lesson for us to learn. We sometimes wonder why all these things are happening around us. Well, it's just possible, and I'll say possible, I think it's reality, but possible that the lifestyle of our nation has brought this on. And it's just going to get worse, okay, unless we have something that we're able to turn it back. So, in verses 3 through 12, you've got these locusts, okay, and it's not literal. Well, let's read it together. There out of the smoke come locusts. Who would be familiar with that? Would the Christian Jews be familiar with that idea of locusts? Yeah, they would, wouldn't they? Upon the earth, and power was given them as the scorpions of the earth have power. They were told not to hurt the grass of the earth, nor any green thing, nor any tree, but only men. In other words, when locusts come by, and you've read about locust plagues, I would imagine, they still go on in places in the world. They just take and get rid of everything, don't they? That's green and so forth, every plant life and so forth. They're not to do that. They're to touch the men who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. And they were not permitted to kill anyone, but to torment for 5 months. And their torment was to be like the torment of a scorpion when it stings a man. In other words, I'm sending you forth not to kill anybody, but to do what? Bring torment in their life. Okay? Make their lives kind of miserable. And in those days, men will seek death and will not find it. They will long to die, and death flees from them. The appearance of the locusts was like horses prepared for battle, and on their heads appeared to be crowns like gold, and their faces were like the faces of men, and had hair like the hair of women, and their teeth were like the teeth of lions. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the sound of chariots, of many horses rushing to battle. They have tails like scorpions and stings, and in their tails is the power to hurt men for 5 months. They have as king over them the angel of the abyss. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in the Greek he has the name of Apollyon. The first woe is past. Behold, 2 woes are still coming after these things. The first woe we just read about then, right? It has to do with the locusts. And they're to bring torment and punishment. How long is that supposed to last?
5 months.
Huh?
5 months.
Okay, the idea of a shorter period, it's not a continual period of time, right? This judgment's going to be for a period of time. And so the affliction is torment, uncertainty, fear, discomfort, superstition, and smitten consciences is what they're really talking about here. And you need to remember that the locusts are not literal. We're talking about a picture of smitten Rome here again. And the description of the locust is a combination of innocence and yieldingness with vicious and devastating power. When you get a locust by itself, there's nothing much to it, is there? But when you pull them together, are they vicious and powerful? They absolutely are when they're in their swarms. The breastplate of iron, this decadence, with this badness, I can't pronounce the word for some reason today, is hard to beat or kill. Think about our country. Pornography falls under protected speech, correct? Under the way of men and women today, and they're not living in righteous ways with one another, but being drawn to the same sex thing. They have the protection of the individual, sin protected, correct? And then when you think about abortion, many want to say, well, it's my body. And so we've killed millions, right? 60 plus million children. And by the way, I should bring this up, but you need to vote properly coming up here in November. Because we don't want our children being a part of incest and all this other stuff that's involved in that thing. Anyhow, we often talk about other horrible people in the world, in history. I don't know of too many nations like ours that have willingly and clearly killed so many children. I think that's called infanticide, isn't it? Something like that? By the way, ladies, your body doesn't belong to you, it belongs to God. And men, you need to understand that also. Sin is sin, Andy. And we need to think seriously about it. Sin definitely took care of Rome, didn't it? And it will take care of the world in the end. In verses 9 through 12 of chapter 9, they've got the power to hurt men. And sin is man's destructive power. I'd like you, who will go to Hosea 13, 1 through 2 for me? Who'll do that? Raise your hand quickly. Okay, let's go to, we'll not read that then. Let's go on over to, I forgot, Ezekiel 22, 31. Okay, it'll be Hosea 13, 1 and 2. Ezekiel 22, 31. I don't remember, John, if you studied this passage or not. It's just an interesting verse for us to read at this time. Thus, 22:31. Thus I have poured out my indignation on them. I have consumed them with the fire of my wrath. Their way I have brought upon their heads, declares the Lord. In other words, God is saying here, if I understand this right, that when he brings judgment, it's clear, isn't it? And he's got the fire, and he's got of his wrath, and he brings it upon their heads. If you bring destruction upon somebody's head, what does that do to them? Takes them out of the way, correct? All right, Hosea passage, please.
13:1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
When Ephraim spoke, there was trembling. He was exalted in Israel, but he incurred guilt through Baal and died. And now they sin no more. Now they sin more and more, and make for themselves metal images, idols skillfully made of their silver, all of them the work of craftsmen. It is said of them, those who offer human sacrifice kiss calves.
Okay. Not a very pleasant passage, is it? But you get the idea that men sin what? More and more and more. And that's certainly what's going on in the world during the Roman period of time, isn't it? But even in all that, God is victorious. God, in the end, as we understand the end, is victorious. If he's victorious, we're all victorious. Nathan, did I get it right?
Yep. You had made mention a while back about like nations and not being Christ-like. Has there ever been a nation that followed Christ? Like, we're supposed to be of the world, but not in the world. Like,
Yeah.
live in the world, but not of the world. So, like, there's nothing new under the sun going on today.
You are correct.
That hasn't happened. I mean, homosexuality, look at Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah.
You know, like, so I think as Christians, like, we've got to keep that in focus a lot, that there is nothing new happening today that hasn't happened in the time of the Israelites. This is rinse and repeat.
You're 100% correct.
History.
The only reason it seems new is news is more on the spot.
Yeah,
But you're right.
Yeah.
Whatever we see Rome involved in, we certainly what?
Yeah.
That's why sin is sin.
Right.
And why we can take passages like this, and no matter how devastating things seem to us right now, if God was in control then,
He's in control now.
He's in control now. And another thing that, since you brought it up, I don't say you brought this up, but who sets up kings and takes down kings?
God does.
Can God set up kings to bring us down?
Yes.
Thank
But
you.
if we're Christians, we don't worry about that.
Exactly.
What nation we're a part of, what.
Even though we may be involved in persecution because of that.
Right.
We may suffer because of bringing punishment on a nation, correct?
Yeah.
Good thought to bring up. Anybody else? Yes, Isaac.
We see this happening during Jesus' ministry, is that the Israelites wanted a godly nation. They wanted a godly nation that was going to take back from the wicked, evil nation, Rome. And when they weren't going to get an earthly kingdom, they ended up killing the Lord.
Yeah.
And so it is, when we start thinking in terms of building earthly kingdoms that are built around Christian ideals, we are missing the point that we have a better kingdom than that.
Yeah. Right now. The kingdom. Yeah. Good thoughts. Anybody else? Yes, Ricky.
May I just ask a question? Would you consider the United States a God-blessed nation at this time? Because if you look, the founding fathers, they tried their best to learn from the mistakes of the Roman Empire, and they tried to put a lot of Christian values into this country, according to my studies of history.
I'm going to let the class answer that for him because sometimes my answers aren't always.
Does it matter whether or not the United
Huh?
States, does it matter whether or not the United States is a Christian nation?
Not for us.
And can it be?
Yeah. I think there was a time we were a little more directed towards the idea that there is a God and God rules. I think personally we have fallen further and further away from that. And I think I'm just concerned and pray to God, don't turn your back totally on us, you know. But just think about the things that we do. We can look at other nations and we can talk about how bad other nations are. But sin is running pretty rampant among us, just like Sodom and Gomorrah and Rome and others. So I think that, you know, God, I believe God can be punishing us right now, and we just don't realize it. That's my belief.
We look at the book of Judges and we all recognize the cycle in the book. We're in a state of somewhat righteousness, and then they stray from it, and they get into this cycle of sin, they get into this oppression, they repent, call for deliverance, and God delivers them. And this cycle repeats like 8 times in this particular book. Well, it didn't just happen to them. After the founding of our country, like in the early 1800s, there was a real revival in Christianity.
Yes.
And I'm using the broad sense of it here. You know, lots of people very active and, you know, in faith and things like that. And it's, you know, the churches of Christ in that particular period built 375 colleges in this country, most of which are no longer religiously affiliated. And everybody was doing all of this work in the name of God, and then we started to stray from it. The cycle of the book of Judges didn't just happen in Judges.
Oh, I think you're correct. And
We're in that cycle.
yes, yes. And there have been several great awakenings or revivals in the world. It's very important for us to think about. So I think we're in the cycle. Yes, I think he can walk away, can't he? Andy.
And, you know, what Isaac is saying is true. We're not a holy nation. We're not Israel. We are not founded by God. So that's true. But we would all like to live in a good place. And we're supposed to be the salt of the world, and we're the preservative. But when we've lost our savor, we're no good to be thrown out. So are we in that phase where we're no good and it's time to be thrown out?
This was not the road I was going down, guys. Okay? Steve.
I think the thing that we fall victim to as humans is ourselves. Because left to our own devices, we tend to want to make ourselves, America, whatever, great again. If we spend as much time and effort trying to make it again, there would be a difference. But as long as we pursue ourselves, we're doomed to repeat the history of the world.
Okay. Anybody else?
That's what the book of Revelation is about, because it started out writing to the churches. I think the church is blessed.
Yes.
The kingdom of we're supposed to be a part of the kingdom of heaven. As far as a nation being blessed, I don't think that's what Revelation is trying to tell us, because Satan is here. We're reading about, this fallen star here, and Satan's, the Bible tells us that he's the prince of the power of the air. He's here, and his demonic destruction is evident all around us, not in just the United States, but all over the world. And it's getting worse. And, to the point where you can't control it. Laws, government can't control it. It's out of control. So I don't think that, our nation, the United States, is blessed. I think that we're blessed in the sense that there are things going on around the world in other countries that aren't happening here right now. But I don't think we are exempt from that.
No.
There's nothing special about the United States.
Now, I believe that God can bless a nation. Okay, I believe he does that, okay? But I understand you're saying, well, we're dealing with the church here, aren't we, in Revelation?
I think it's all
and the church being
spiritual.
blessed.
It's spiritual.
Absolutely.
And we need to be more concerned about the church than the
Correct.
physical nation itself.
Correct.
Because we're supposed to be trying to save souls.
Right.
And I think God is trying to save individuals, not countries.
Okay. Anybody else? Good talk. Yes. Oh, way over there. Okay. What's your name again?
Alfred.
Okay. I'll forget it next time again. Go ahead.
Just a thought, like Sodom and Gomorrah, and he said, you know, if there were 10 people there, would you save the whole land? And he said he would. So like, yeah, Sodom and Gomorrah, that the Lord was going to bestow grace upon them if there were 10 righteous people found there. So it's like, I wonder if in the state of our country, maybe grace could be extended to us, because maybe there's righteous people there, you know, so I wonder if it's not as much of us being a Christian nation or not, but maybe we have some God's people here, and maybe because of that, the nation experiences grace as a result of that, you know.
Can I just say, okay? It's a good question, a good thought. There's always good questions and good thoughts. I don't know if does anybody have an answer from the book for it?
We don't know.
It's a good question. So we have to take lessons from this book and say, okay, no matter what happens around us, we have to remain righteous, correct? And I think you're right. Our righteousness and our zeal, our enthusiasm for God, our understanding of Him, could save this nation, if that's what you're talking about.
And just wonder, I wonder just if, nation aside, if it's just, you know, because I think just like what she was mentioning of, it's not really about our country, but it's about the people. God people here, and I wonder just if God's people are here, does that, because His people are here, would He extend grace to everyone to a certain extent? To a certain
I
extent.
certainly
to
think
like
we can be
where
a
maybe
blessing.
things
You're talking about us being a
are
blessing to people? Is that what you're talking about?
and just maybe where certain things are averted that maybe we could experience that we're just not because of the grace of God and God because His people are here.
Good thoughts, thank you.
I was gonna just tag on, like, Jesus and the apostles didn't come to change the laws of the earth
Right.
and the nation.
That's right.
They came to show people the way to heaven.
Right.
And like, we spend so much time here on earth arguing and trying to make this world better, and we're losing sight of, well, this earth isn't gonna be around. Like, it's great to try to make it as good as we can make it to live here, but like, we need to keep our sight on getting people to heaven, saving the people, and that's what
You're
Jesus
absolutely
and the
correct.
apostles did.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Thank you. Anybody else? Y'all really not gonna let me finish.
I find, when thinking about a lot of these things, Ecclesiastes 7, verses 9 and 10 is
Okay.
both a rebuke and also comforting.
You
at
wanna
the
read
same
that
time.
for us?
Yes, I have it right here. Be not quick in your spirits to become angry, for anger lodges in the hearts of fools. Say not, why were former days better than these? For it is not from wisdom that you ask this.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. We just finished chapter 9. That was the second or the first one? Okay. Let me just go through some things here. And if you got anything else, please raise your hand. Yeah, I don't really. Thursday, they take the class away all the time anyhow, so I'm used to that, you know.
Well, we strayed so
I
much,
know.
I didn't get a chance.
I'm just having fun. Okay.
When he talks about these locusts, he gives such detail. Do you think there's any message in the teeth and the hair and all that? Any
They're pretty
specific-
horrifying, aren't they?
Yeah,
Yeah, they're to be,
but what's the hair mean? What's the teeth? Are there
well, I don't get
specific-
into all that. You could
I
get into
wonder.
that, yeah, but I think it's just a picture of just how terrible this judgment's gonna be. That's what I think, okay? Anybody else got an answer for our brother here? Or the teeth or the hair? One thing you have to be careful of, I can just associate in the book of Revelation, is trying to make every picture mean something. You know, every part of it, you know, well, the teeth mean this, or the hair mean, I think, and it could mean something, but we kind of have to be careful on that. We need to get the whole picture that, what, this is gonna really happen, and this judgment is gonna be terrible, isn't it? So, thank you, that's a good question.
We could definitely take that away from it.
Yes, good question. Anybody else? Okay, if we were to, and you can do the rest of your own, in verses 13 to 16, you've got external attacks there. You've got those, well, you go on down through these, should be in your notes down through there, and it'll just basically finish it. Next week, we're going to get into chapters 10 and 11. Now, just to conclude this, God uses the trumpets to bring the sinner to repentance. Despite what happened, many refuse to do so. In other words, he has given man a chance to repent. What's man refused to do? That's nothing new, is it? In chapter 9, there are two instruments of punishment as you look into it. Internal and external. Internal corruption and external invasion. So anyhow, that's chapters 8 and 9, and just a light look at it, and let's have a good break for fellowship. Thank you.